Hello, my brothers, and welcome back to week 3 of this month's Narrow Road. You know, by now we're focusing on the virtue of integrity, and this week, in week 3, we focus on integrity with our children. Guys, this is one of the most important places that we can exhibit integrity in our lives is with our relationship with our children. We all want to raise good, wholesome, moral, amazing kids. But you don't wave a wand and that just happens. Right? I'm a young father still. My oldest kid is 11. But one thing I've learned is I can't just hope for that. I have to model it every single day in my life. I have to look at all my behaviors and the way that I'm going about my life and make sure that my words are matching my actions, that I'm the same person all the time, and that I'm not placing expectations on them that I wouldn't place on myself. A lot of times growing up, I heard the phrase, do as I say, not as I do, more times than I care to count. From coaches, from my own father, from my grandfather, from uncles, from other men in my life. I remember hearing that so often and sitting back and saying, okay, I don't get that. Like, why do I have to do something that you say that you're not doing yourself? But it was a common phrase we heard all the time. I also heard, John, your word's all you got in this life. You break your word, you go back, you become untrustworthy, you lose everything. Once people don't take you at your word, you've lost everything. And I can remember so many men in my life, including my father, that made promises to me that didn't keep their word. But they would throw that phrase out all day long, and I could write down all the places on tons of pieces of paper where those men had let me down in my life, where they had made promise after promise after promise that never came true. Guys, we can't just talk a good game. We can't just say go to church and figure out how to be a morally good person. We can't just say don't lie. We have to exhibit it in our own lives. A lot of times that takes humility when we've made mistakes, going back and correcting and asking forgiveness as we talked about in the months before. But guys, we can't expect our children, whether they're 5, 15, 25, 45, to act any different than we do. I mean, it really is amazing. If we sit around, and this is an issue I've talked to about a bunch of men, with a bunch of men, they go, I can't believe my kids grew up drinking the way they do. And you ask them, and they're like, well, yeah, I used to drink 4 or 5 beers a night in front of them. I come home, have 2 or 3 stiff drinks every night. But that's what I did. That was my choice. I told them never to drink. Our actions didn't match our words. Right? We have to realize that we're a hero to our children. Right? We might as well be God for a long time in our life to our children. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but they look at us as if we can do no wrong. They want to be like us. They want to emulate us. And so we can't just simply say, don't do this and then go do it ourselves. I'm not saying you can't have a drink. I'm not saying you can't, enjoy things in life. I'm just saying, don't expect your kids not to sit there and when they get home to drive and get out of the house and get away from you to be slamming beers if you're slamming beers every night. Because they're going to think whatever dad thought was cool is cool. If you speak to your wife or people harshly, other people in your life harshly, you can't expect them not to do the same thing. I can't tell you how many times I've heard one of my children speak to Angel in a way that's not kosher at all. That just drives me nuts. It makes me angry. And when I go to yell at him, I'm like, I spoke to her like that last week. I was short with her. I answered her in that tone of voice. And now I'm about to spank my kid or punish my kid or yell at my kid when all he did was watch what I did. And they're doing it. They're emulating. Children are like sponges. And again, I don't care if they're 50 or 5. I'm 43 years old, about to be in November, and I still look up to my dad for everything. I look at him and see how he lives his life all the time. He's my hero. We have that place in their lives, all of their lives. And so we have to understand if we want them to be men of integrity, or women of integrity, we have to be men of integrity. I mean, I wrote down in the reflection this week about that instance with Jacob, and I'll share it here again. Here I was, fresh out of a jail cell, telling Angel I'm going to change my life, going to church and trying to lead and all those things. But yet, one Sunday, I just didn't feel like going to church. I laid up in the bed because I stayed up late watching movies and all that, so probably had a couple drinks and didn't feel like going to church. We'd moved into a new house, and that stairwell that came down from their room was right across from my bedroom door. Angela had been up for a while now, making sure the kids were fed and ready to go to church and dressed and showered and all those things. And I'd laid under the bed, or under the covers in the bed, sitting there moaning about how I didn't want to go to church and it didn't matter just this once if I didn't go, and I'd go to confession and I'd make up for it and all of that stuff. All of that was in earshot of my children. I was so self-absorbed in thinking about where I was in my issue at the moment that I was more important than going and worshiping God on that Sunday morning because I didn't feel like it. I thought, what's the big deal? Until after Angela was through yelling at me and about ready to go out the door, Jacob came downstairs and had his shirt buttoned wrong. And she knelt down and started to button his button. And he said, I don't want to go to church either, Mom. I don't want to go to church. Why should I have to go to church if Dad doesn't have to go to church? And Angela said, I can't. Your dad's an adult and he makes his own choices. I can't help that. But you're going to church. And he walked out of the house upset. I mean, I sat there under that blanket, under those sheets, as I heard the van pull out, leaving my house going, I made a promise to God I was going to change my life. I made a promise to my wife I was going to be better. I told my kids I was going to be a better father. And here I am laying up in the bed, a victim of my own choices, and expecting them to be different, expecting them for Mass and the church and these things to be important to them when I'm showing them right now, even if it's just this one Sunday, it's not important to me. I got up out of that bed, I jumped in the shower, I threw on my clothes, and I walked into Mass a few minutes late. And I sat down and I looked at my son and I said, Jacob, I'm sorry. And he said, why, Dad? I said, for the example I've been to you this morning. God's the most important thing in our life. And I forgot that for a little bit this morning. I'm sorry. But please make sure you never forget it in your life and don't be like me. He looked at me and he just nodded his head. And he put his arm around me and he sat next to me at church that day. But guys, this is how easy it can be to simply get involved in ourselves, to look inward and say, I don't want to live by those rules. I don't want to practice what I preach. I want other people to do what I say, but I don't want to be, it's like being in Congress, right? I'm going to make all these laws that the rest of the country has to abide by, but I'm going to have my own set of rules, my own health care, my own all of this. There's a great hypocrisy in all of that. And our children see it. And it drives them more to do exactly what we don't want them to do because they've seen us do what we've told them not to do. Again, guys, doesn't matter if your kids are 5 or if they're 55. We have to model this in our lives. We can't expect them to be children or men or grow up to be men and women of integrity if we're not going to do that ourselves. We have to give them an example. And that example is going to be one of two things, either a great example or a bad example. A man who says what he means and means what he says, or a man that picks and chooses how he wants to live his life. Those are the examples we're going to lead. A man of integrity or a man who doesn't keep his word. The choice is ours. And it's not too late now if you've been living your life in the negative way to change it right now. You're always going to be the hero to your kids. You're always going to be their dad. And you always have an opportunity to show them how to live integrity in their life. So my brothers, let's focus in on this week. Let's look for those opportunities to tell our children, to show our children how to live their life as a whole person, as an honest and trustworthy person, right? To be the same child, whether people are around or not, by the way that we live our lives. So let's pray for the grace to do this. Let's pray for the opportunities to practice this in our life. And let's be the examples that our children deserve. Thanks for your time. Pray for me. No, I'm praying for you. God bless.